Welcome to Fear and Greed, the week ahead. I'm Sean Aylmer, and for the first time in 2024, I'm joined by economist Stephen Koukoulas. You'll find him at thekouk.com, TheKouk.com, and on X using the handle The Kouk. Stephen, welcome to 2024.
Hooray! Happy New Year, Sean, and to all the listeners out there. What a year it's going to be for us all.
It'll be a great year. We started off last week with some pretty interesting economic news. We had consumer sentiment, which was weak. We had labour force figures, and we also had, well, maybe a little bit of a hawkish US federal governor.
Oh, it was a week with there being something for everybody. Consumer sentiment. We know we consumers are gloomy. The interest rate increases are impacting on our cash flow. There's still a cost of living issue out there. And, well, interlinked, perfectly dovetailing to the labour force numbers, the weakness in the labour market could well be having an impact on how people are feeling. If you're losing your job or at threat of losing your job, your optimism's not going to be that great. So the labour force numbers saw a big fall in employment. Now, it must be noted that it's in the context of the last couple of months being very strong. So the ABS acknowledged, which is good that they did it, that there's a bit of a problem of seasonally adjusting numbers between October, November, December. The Black Friday sales we know have impacted retail sales, but they've also appeared to be impacting employment. But that aside, if we look at the trend and cut through that volatility month to month, you're still seeing employment slowing. The unemployment rate, while it stayed at 3.9, it's still up half a percentage point on where we were a year ago. So the labour market's weakening, the economy's slowing down, and that's just been confirmed in the early part of 2024.
Okay, so as you look at the week ahead, plenty going on overseas. But before we get there, the National Australia Business Survey. Tell us what you think will happen. But firstly, tell us why you think it's important.
It's my favourite survey because it's contemporary. This is going to have business sentiment being reflected right up until the last couple of weeks. I think the survey was conducted in the first 10, 12 days of January. So it's really what businesses were feeling in that Christmas, New Year period. So it's brand new data. And for example, the most recent GDP numbers are relying on for the September quarter. My goodness, that's a long time ago. So they're up to date, but also the questions they ask. This is Alan Oster, the NAB chief economist, who I've got a huge amount of time for. He's framed the questions from the perspective of things that matter. So what's happening to you as a business person? Your purchase costs, a great indicator of inflation. What are your hiring intentions? So what are you planning to do in terms of hiring? A great leading indicator for employment. And just the big picture sort of views, what's your consumer sentiment like? What's your optimism like? And if people are feeling gloomy in their business, it's a great leading indicator of where the economy is going. So I'll be watching that very closely. Just as a bit of background, it had been resilient up until about September, October last year. Just in the last couple of months, it started to track lower in line with the weakening in the economy. It'd be interesting to see if there's any more deterioration coming through in the next survey, which comes out this week.
Okay, we also have a bunch of global central banks meeting about interest rates this week.
That's the big issue. So this will dominate market sentiment, market pricing, I dare say, because we're at this, what do we call it, this inflection point from where we've had the aggressive rate hikes through 2022 and 2023 from most central banks. And as we chatted late last year, markets are pricing in interest rate cuts in 2024. So here's a really good stock take from some of the big, important central banks. China, their meeting, it's a little bit different because their economy has been very weak and they actually have deflation. Prices are falling in China, and we had numbers last week confirming their population's also falling. So China is likely just to trim its interest rates as it deals with the deflation and, well, what do we call it, the really sluggish growth that's going on. But more importantly for an economy like Australia, the European Central Bank, the Bank of Canada, the Bank of Japan are all meeting. And while there's probably not going to be a change in interest rates in any of them, it's what they say rather than what they do that'll be most interesting. Are they going to be sort of starting to flag the idea that these big central banks around the world are genuinely thinking about interest rate cuts?
And we'll find out more about that in a fortnight's time. So it's a couple of weeks away, the CPI figures for Australia.
Yeah, they're next week that we get the December month and December quarter CPI. Absolutely critical. The two elements that I'm really focusing on for our own Reserve Bank, and they've effectively said this, so we know this from decades and decades of looking at the RBA, it's inflation and the labour market that are the key drivers. Yeah, house prices a bit and retail sales a bit and all these other things are feed into the mix. But they're not going to adjust interest rates if the labour market is strong and inflation's too high, which is where we have, the weakness in the labour market. That's sort of half ticking a box that the next move in rates is down. We need another couple of months to confirm that weakness. But the inflation numbers, we've had that fall in inflation through the course of 2023. Another step lower is likely, but we can talk about that next week too.
We can. Stephen, enjoy the week.
Will do, Sean. Thank you, mate.
That was economist Stephen Koukoulas, better known as The Kook. You can find him at thekook.com and follow him on X using the handle The Kook. I'm Sean Aylmer, and this is Fear and Greed, the week ahead.